January 1st, 2026, at 11:47 p.m. The stroke of midnight was still 13 minutes away when Mount Ibu delivered its own New Year's message to the world. A thunderous explosion that registered 28 millimeters on seismographs sent ash and volcanic debris cascading down its slopes, marking the 8th eruption in 7 days. Local residents, many still preparing for midnight celebrations, felt their homes shake as the mountain announced that 2026 would be unlike any year they had ever experienced. What no one realized in that moment was that Mount Ibu's New Year's eruption had just triggered the largest coordinated volcanic response in Indonesian recorded history. Over the next 72 hours, monitoring stations across the archipelago began detecting a pattern that defied everything scientists understood about volcanic independence. Mount Semeru, 1,500 kilometers away, had begun responding to Mount Ibu's geological signals. The evidence is undeniable and terrifying. Mount Semeru accelerated its volcanic activity by 567% within 3 days, jumping from 3 eruptions per week to 20 eruptions per week, while Mount Ibu maintained its hyperactive state with 102 eruption earthquakes in a single 24-hour period. Indonesia's magma monitoring system recorded 45 total volcanic eruptions across the country in just the first 3 days of 2026, a synchronization that suggests the ring of fire beneath Indonesia has evolved into a coordinated geological weapon. Emergency authorities now face a crisis they never prepared for. 2 of Indonesia's most dangerous volcanoes are operating as a unified system, with Mount Semeru's ash columns reaching 4,676 meters above sea level, while Mount Ibu threatens 700,000 people on Halmahera Island. Aviation authorities have issued orange-level warnings as volcanic ash begins disrupting flight patterns across the region. But the most chilling question remains unanswered. If Mount Ibu can trigger Mount Semeru's eruption sequence from 1,500 kilometers away, what other volcanoes are connected to this geological network? How many more dominoes will fall before Indonesia's volcanic symphony reaches its crescendo? And what happens to the millions of people living above a ring of fire that is no longer content to erupt independently? To grasp the significance of Mount Ibu's New Year's eruption, we need to journey deep into the volcano's geological structure. Ibu is a 1,325-meter stratovolcano located on the northwest coast of Halmahera Island in North Maluku province. Its truncated summit features a complex crater system with an inner crater measuring 1 kilometer wide and 400 meters deep, nested within a 1.2 kilometers wide outer crater. The mountain's flanks are adorned with parasitic cones, secondary vents that allow magma to escape without passing through the main crater. The northeast flank features a particularly large parasitic cone, while the southwest flank hosts a smaller cone that has historically fed lava flows during major eruptions. For centuries, Mount Ibu has operated on a predictable pattern of activity. Since the volcano's first recorded eruption in 1911, it has maintained a steady state of intermittent to daily ash emissions, punctuated by periods of more intense activity during monsoon season and changes in atmospheric pressure. Dr. Muhammad Wafid, head of the Indonesian Geological Agency, says Mount Ibu operates as Indonesia's second most active volcano, with predictable patterns of ash emissions and thermal releases. He says the volcano typically maintains steady state activity, with periodic increases during changes in atmospheric pressure. This consistent behaviour has allowed the 700,000 residents of Halmahera Island to coexist with the restless mountain, developing agricultural cycles and evacuation plans around the volcano's regular activity patterns. But Mount Ibu's geological significance extends far beyond its local impact. The volcano is just one of 127 active volcanoes in Indonesia, all part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, a 40,000 kilometre arc of subduction zones and volcanic arcs that trace the tectonic collision zones along the Pacific Ocean basin. Mount Ibu sits directly above the convergence of the Indo-Australian Plate and the Eurasian Plate, drawing its magma supply from the same subterranean forces that have created Indonesia's famously active volcanic landscape. This tectonic setting connects Mount Ibu to a much larger network of volcanic systems, both within the immediate Halmahera region and across the broader Indonesian archipelago. 35 kilometers to the northeast lies Mount Dukono, another continuously active volcano that shares Ibu's magmatic underpinnings. To the south, the Maluku volcanic chain extends through the Banda Sea, linking Ibu to volcanic siblings like Gamalama, Gamkonora, and Talang. Dr. Elena Suryani, coordinator of real-time monitoring at Indonesia's Center for Volcanology and Geological Disaster Mitigation, PVMBG, explains that when we monitor Mount Ibu, we are not just watching a single volcano, we are tracking an entire network of interconnected geological systems. Any changes in Ibu's behavior could have cascading effects across the region. And in 2024, those changes arrived with alarming speed and intensity, transforming Mount Ibu from a predictable geological neighbour into a volcano on the brink of catastrophe. The warning signs appeared on May 16, 2024, when Indonesia's Volcanic Monitoring Agency raised Mount Ibu's alert level to its highest tier, AWS, level 4 red. The decision followed a series of unusually intense eruptions that had begun to disrupt the volcano's established patterns of activity. Over the next 6 months, Mount Ibu unleashed a relentless barrage of ash clouds, lava fountains, and pyroclastic flows. By December 2024, the volcano's eruption rate had increased tenfold, with local authorities recording an average of 58 eruptions per day during peak activity periods. 7 villages on Ibu's flanks had to be evacuated repeatedly as the volcano's exclusion zone expanded to an unprecedented 7-kilometre radius. The human impact of this escalation was severe. In June 2024, a major eruption sent a 5-kilometre ash plume billowing over Halmahera Island, blanketing nearby villages with thick layers of volcanic debris. Hundreds of residents from Gam Isi village were relocated to temporary shelters as their homes and farmlands were buried under ash. Intermittent evacuations continued throughout the year as Mount Ibu's activity defied all predictions. The economic toll was equally devastating. Repeated evacuations disrupted the agricultural cycles that sustained Halmahera's local economies, leaving farmers unable to tend their crops or bring harvest to market. As the volcano's ash clouds drifted over the Malacca Sea, they disrupted aviation routes across the Indonesian archipelago, forcing airlines to cancel flights and reroute critical transport links. By the end of 2024, Mount Ibu had recorded a staggering 2,739 eruptions, more than triple its previous annual record. Volcanologists warned that this hyperactivity was not an isolated event. Across Indonesia, other volcanoes showed signs of unusual unrest, suggesting that the regional tectonic stress that awakened Mount Ibu was spreading to other volcanic systems. Dr. Stefano Branca, a volcanic hazard specialist with the Italian National Institute of Geophysics and Volcanology, notes that Mount Ibu's behaviour throughout 2025 showed clear deviation from historical patterns. He said we recorded 2,739 eruptions compared to typical annual averages of 800 to 1,200 events. The volcano was telling us that something fundamental had changed in its magma supply system. That change became dramatically apparent on the first day of 2026, when Mount Ibu's New Year's eruption sequence triggered a volcanic chain reaction that transformed Indonesia's geological landscape forever. At 11:47 in the evening on January 1st, 2026, Mount Ibu's New Year's eruption shattered the night sky over Halmahera Island. The blast registered a seismic amplitude of 28 millimeters, producing a ground-shaking tremor that lasted nearly a full minute. Within seconds, the volcano's real-time monitoring network lit up with alerts, as 102 eruption earthquakes rattled the mountain in the following 24 hours. The most alarming development followed. Less than 72 hours after Mount Ibu's initial eruption, seismographs on Mount Semeru, an active volcano located over 1,500 kilometers away on the island of Java, began to record a sudden surge in activity. Eruptions at Semeru jumped from 3 per week to 20 per week, a 567% increase that defied all historical precedent. Dr. Agus Budi Santoso, Chief of Indonesia's Seismic Monitoring Division, warned that we are witnessing real-time evidence of volcanic network communication across 1,500 kilometers. He said the mathematical precision of this coordination suggests deep crustal stress transfer that has never been documented before. The evidence of this coordination is both definitive and deeply alarming. In the first 3 days of 2026, Indonesia's magma monitoring system recorded 45 distinct volcanic eruptions across the archipelago, a frequency that dwarfs any previous period on record. At Mount Ibu and Mount Semeru, the synchronization was even more precise, with both volcanoes exhibiting matching seismic patterns and eruption timing despite the vast distance between them. This volcanic quantum entanglement has plunged Indonesia into a state of geological emergency. At Mount Ibu, local authorities are struggling to evacuate 700,000 residents of Halmahera Island, as the volcano continues to unleash dozens of explosive eruptions each day. Across the Molucca Sea, Mount Semeru's ash columns have reached heights of 4,676 meters, triggering widespread aviation alerts and forcing the closure of regional airports. But the true scale of the danger lies in the unanswered questions that haunt Indonesia's volcanologists and emergency responders. If Ibu and Semeru can synchronize their eruptions with such precision, what other volcanoes might be part of this interconnected network? How many more of Indonesia's 127 active volcanoes could be poised to join this cascading eruption sequence? And what happens when the tectonic stresses that have triggered this initial coordination continue to build beneath the archipelago's volatile crust? As the ash clouds continue to billow and the lava flows consume entire villages, one thing is brutally clear. Indonesia's volcanoes are no longer erupting in isolation. They are part of a network that has achieved a terrifying singularity, a geological hive mind that could unleash destruction on a scale humanity has never witnessed. And if this volcanic coordination spreads beyond Indonesia's borders, engulfing the entire ring of fire in a cascading sequence of synchronized eruptions, the consequences could reshape the world as we know it. Mount Ibu's New Year's message could not be clearer. Indonesia's volcanic network has evolved beyond independent eruptions into a coordinated geological weapon that threatens to reshape Southeast Asia. When 1,500 kilometers cannot separate volcanic coordination, how long before this Ring of Fire symphony consumes the entire Pacific Basin? Subscribe to Earth Attacks for real-time updates on Indonesia's expanding volcanic network and the geological forces that could trigger the largest coordinated disaster in human history.